Ladies and gents, welcome back to another YouTube video. Thank you for tuning in, and today we're talking about buy, refurbish, refinance. In fact, we're going to be talking about my buy, refurbish, refinance experience on my latest project, which I'm finally happy to be talking about now that we're getting close to the end of that project. We're just going through the refinance and the tenants have actually just moved in. Now, if you haven't seen this project before, I've got 3 videos, I'll put the thumbnails up here, in which you can go back and look at from the start, halfway through the refurb, and then at the end of the refurbishment. But in today's video, I'm going to talk you through the actual process and the pros and the cons and any tips that I can give you for the BRR strategy. So let's take it back, let's look at what it's taken for me to purchase this project. Now, if you take it all the way back to January, I set my goal, which was to find my new buy-to-let property. I was really struggling to find properties that are currently on the market with agents because they're high in price, and I was competing with lots of other people and lots of other offers. So I then changed my strategy slightly and I went down the route of direct to vendor. I'd seen a lot of people doing this online and I figured if they can do it, I can learn it and do it too. And I wanted to give it a go. So therefore in January and February, I started finding empty houses, finding rundown houses and sending out letters to the owners of those properties. And finally, in March, I say finally, I was quite lucky with my response rate. I had a very good conversion rate for the letters that I did send out. But finally in March, I had a response from an owner who said, listen, I've got a portfolio of properties. The one that you have sent me a letter about is currently sitting empty. It's in a rundown condition and I would actually be interested in selling it. So then one Sunday, I drove up to Liverpool 5 hours, viewed the property, met a builder and got a quote there and then drove 5 hours back and then submitted my offer on the Monday. As part of my condition of my direct to vendor letter was I would always view and make an offer within 24 hours of seeing that property. So I stuck by my words and I submitted an offer on the basis of, quite a big refurbishment and the fact that the house was in a bit of a state. So after a bit of toing and froing, a little bit of negotiation, the owner accepted my offer, which was brilliant, and then we progressed into legals. Now I have a very good solicitor, so I worked with the solicitor that I was working with at the time, managed to help me push this through within 6 weeks. So within 6 weeks of viewing and offering the property, I had exchanged and completed and took possession of the property at the end of April. So completed in April, no need to collect any keys as there wasn't a front door, it was boarded up, but I had a new front door added straight away, and then of course the builder was meant to get started straight away as well. Unfortunately, there were some delays, the builder was quite busy, and of course I flung this project on him quite last minute, but also it was a little bit of a delay for him getting started, meaning that a job that was hopefully going to take 8 weeks or 2 months actually took more like 3.5 months. So that's something I will come on to discuss. I maybe didn't budget for that amount of time. However, we live, we learn, and there were some delays along the way, which I will take experience and note from. But after that, we're now sitting here in September. The refurb is finished. The property was put on the market and I had a lot of interest, 5 applicants within 24 hours, and the tenants have just moved in at the full rental price of $575 that I had asked for. And the last part of this process, of course, is the refinance, which has been started a few weeks ago and I'm hoping to update you on very soon. So now looking at the pros and the cons of the BRR process, because I know a lot of you out there that are looking to get started in property, you often wonder whether you should go down the route of a turnkey buy-to-let or whether you want to do the buy, refurbish, refinance strategy. And of course, we would all love to do the BRR strategy because then it means we can keep the money moving. But let's have a look at the pros and the cons. And these pros and cons I'm constantly comparing almost against a turnkey buy-to-let. And what I mean by turnkey is, a buy-to-let that we would purchase, leave our initial investment in and rent it out and then move on, okay? So looking at the pros of buy, refurbish, refinance, well, of course, you get a refurbished house at the end of this project. So why is that a pro? Well, because of course the property is going to be brand new. Hopefully there's going to be a lot less maintenance, and also it means that you can hopefully achieve a much higher rent because of the fact it's brand new. New kitchen, new bathroom, looks very nice and shiny and new, and therefore it should be easy to rent, get a good price, and in theory, less maintenance for the first few years of owning this property. Of course, a big one is refinancing the money out of the deal. Okay, so we leave less money in the deal, becomes a more efficient deal, means that we can move this money onto the next project. There's more exits. Okay, and what I mean by more exits are the fact that, you know, when you've bought a property, if it needs a full refurbishment and then you take it through the refurb process, at the end you're left with this nice house. You can rent this out, or should you need the money, you could quite easily flip it, okay? And you could flip that for a profit and it would still make it a worthwhile deal. Whereas if you had bought a ready-to-go buy-to-let, you might have paid, you know, a certain price, you've not done any work to it, it's hard to justify selling it for a higher price, arguably. So there's more exits, more you can do with a property that you have taken through this process if you need to sell it rather than keeping it. And last of all, a higher return on investment. If we're leaving less money in this deal and we're achieving a higher rent, inevitably that's going to lead to a higher return on the money that we've left in that project. So moving over again to the cons. So looking at the cons of the BRR process, well, it's very, very cash intensive. So to be exact, my property that I bought, my first property, which was a turnkey, I invested about £16,000 into that project, rented it straight out, and off we went. This property, my latest one, my BRR property, I've had to invest £32,000 into, and of course I will be able to refinance about £20,000 out and only leave 12 in, but that initial cash outlay is very intensive and obviously a lot more than if you were just buying a straight buy-to-let ready to rent out. Cash flow definitely suffers along the way. So, you know, if you think that you're going to have a 3 to 6 month period where not only are you paying for deposit, all the fees, the refurb, but you've then got things like council tax, you've got the mortgage interest or the bridging loan to pay for, insurance, and you're seeing no return on that money for all of this time that it's just sat there empty. So cash flow massively suffers until you get it rented out. And there is also the possibility there could be time delays. So this is definitely a big one for me. I factored in maybe a 3-month refurb, and actually when you take in all of the refurb, the delays and issues that have come up, I'm about 4 or 5 months down the line. So there's a couple of months there I didn't necessarily budget for, but I've been able to overcome along the way. And last of all, added stress, which is definitely one I've noticed a lot more, you know, in comparison to my first property, which was a turnkey buy-to-let. There's been a lot more stress in this. Obviously I've come to get used to it, but there's a lot to be said about a good investment that's below market value. You can buy it, you can rent it straight out, you get cash flow and it's not sitting empty, versus a house that's got lots of stressors like the refurb, it's sitting empty, and you know, you're spending lots of money on it. So taking it back to basics for some of the beginners out there, what does the BRR process look like and what are the stages that we can expect to go through? Well, first of all, of course, we need to find below market value deals. This isn't going to work if you can't find a house that's BMV. Now, a lot of people throw that term around, below market value, but it's effectively finding a property which you can secure at a value in which allows you to refurbish it and push that value up and get the refinance. Now, it's important that you do your due diligence right and you buy a deal at the right price, because it's not a good idea to try and make the figures work. So first of all, find BMV deals. We need to find one of them, which can be done on Rightmove. It's harder right now given the way the market is. And therefore a lot of experienced investors are turning to doing direct to vendor. So once we've found the property that we're going to be doing this with, of course we need to finance it. Now, I don't know 100%, you know, if you ask different mortgage brokers, they say different things, but as long as you're doing a small amount of these types of deals, then you can do this using a regular mortgage. Now, if you do start doing more and multiple deals a year, then I'm told by mortgage brokers that that will get flagged by the lenders because you are regularly taking out mortgage products and then refinancing them early. So depending on what you find and how many you're going to do, we could use a mortgage. Now, why would we use bridging? Well, as I've just said, if you're doing multiple deals like this a year, you might want to look at bridging finance. But not only that, but if you do find a property which needs a huge refurbishment, maybe it's missing a kitchen because someone ripped it out or really badly damaged it, maybe it's missing the bathroom, then sometimes the house isn't mortgageable anyway. And therefore you need to use bridging finance because they take more of a view on the overall project rather than the house in its current condition. Bridging finance is more than achievable to secure. It's just, of course, it's a short-term loan, short-term finance, which also means it comes with higher costs. Now, once we have arranged the finance and we've gone through the conveyancing process, we're going to exchange and complete on this house, obviously. So we exchange and complete, and the minute we get the keys, we hopefully have been talking to the builders the whole way through the conveyancing process, meaning at the minute we get the keys, we can get them to start on the refurb. Now, the refurb, ideally on a vanilla buy-to-let, would be about 8 to 10 weeks, but I would definitely always say factor in an additional month because many things can change along the way. Something could come up with the property itself, more work required than you thought, or it could be an illness. Obviously there's lots of illness going on right now, which could mean a tradesperson doesn't come to work for a week, or it could be a lack of materials. So definitely factor in additional time and of course additional money for the refurb. And once that's done, we're then going to start the refinance. Now, ideally you start the refinance before the rental stage, but these could be swapped around if you need to get someone in straight away to get it cash flowing. But refinancing that property, remembering that if you're doing this pre 6 months, so if you've not owned this property for 6 months, then you're going to have a lot less products to choose from on the mortgage market, and you definitely need to talk to your broker about the benefits to refinancing before 6 months or after 6 months, because there's often better deals and more products available if you go to refinance after 6 months. Last of all, as I say, you could swap these around, but last of all, renting it out. And now that it's a finished house, you should be going for top market value on your rent, and of course doing a lot of due diligence when picking a tenant. So rent the property out. And last of all, of course, is repeat, because we've refinanced, we've got it rented out. Now we're going to repeat it, because that's why we're doing the buy, refurbish, refinance process. And of course, if we're doing all of this and we're getting to the end of this and we're not managing to pull out a large portion of our money, if you're having to only pull out maybe £5,000 or £10,000 from this deal, then I don't necessarily deem that worthwhile, and it means you can't then take all of your money and move on to the next part of the process. So for this next part, I wanted to give you some tips. Okay, for anyone brand new to this is the things that I've learned and I think that you could really benefit from. First of all, it would be calculate your holding costs, okay, which is an obvious one, but maybe over-calculate your holding costs. So, you're going to be sitting with this property empty for at least 6 months really, or that's what you should be saying in your head, where you should be working out that, right, well, with this property sitting empty, in addition to other costs like buying it, the refurb, etc., I've also got to be thinking about the mortgage interest or the bridging loan. I've got to be thinking about insurance, I've got to be thinking about council tax, heating, electricity, and think of all of that, budget for it, and put it in for 6 months where you're earning no rent. Okay, so you need to have that cash and that cash flow in order to help you pay for that. Next one, of course, this is an obvious one again, but budget 10% contingency. Now, as you get better and as you get more experience, you could probably drop this down to 5 to 7% contingency. But certainly at the beginning, you should be saying to yourself, well, if I have got a budget of £10,000 for the refurb, I need a £1,000 contingency, or a 20k refurb, I need 2k to go over with. And you wouldn't believe it, but you will near enough always spend it. So keep that 10% contingency available at all times for you during the refurb. Remember costs for the gas safety certificate and the EICR, which is your electrical report. The gas safety has to be done every year, the electrical report has to be done every 5 years, but more than likely if you've done a full refurb on this property, you might have moved some pipe work, you might have moved the boiler or put in a new boiler, you might have changed the electrics, the consumer unit, therefore you're going to need new reports. And if you have to have the new reports done and there needs to be any remedial works, this can quickly go from £100 to £400 without you even knowing. So budget for that as well. Don't forget about those, because you've spent out a lot of money on the refurb, the holding costs. You get to the end of it, you think the end is in sight, and then you get hit by another bill. So remember those costs. And last of all, note the areas to improve in future, because listen, we're all beginners here. We can learn as much as we can from these videos. We can learn as much as we can from courses and things like that, but there's nothing like actually getting the experience yourself. So get the knowledge, then going and experience it, and then remember the points in which you made mistakes or which you could improve, and then take them with you into the future. And I said that was the last comment, but the last comment is enjoy the process, because this is seriously stressful at times. And I've really come bogged down with stress at times that it's involved. However, you've got to remember to enjoy it. You love property, you want to do this full time, so just take it and roll with the punches and enjoy the whole process. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you want to learn this sort of information in more depth, don't forget that you can check out the Property X program, put the link in the description for you. If I've missed anything from the BRR process, or if you've got anything to add about my experience in buy, refurbish, refinance, please drop it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.